Llywelyn ap Gruffudd, the grandson of Llywelyn the Great, Prince of Gwynedd, Lord of Snowdon, Prince of Pura Walia, Tywysog Cymru, Llywelyn the Last. Llywelyn eich Llyw Olaf, who was cheated and murdered on the 11th of December in the cold frost on Pont Orewin near Llanfair y Muallt in the year 1282. He was killed on the command of King Edward I. But killing him wasn't enough. They cut off his head to show to the Welsh a Cymru that the Tywysog had been killed and that Cymru was now ruled by the King of England. They took his head to London and displayed it in front of the Tower of London, so all could see what would happen to the king's enemies. I know all of this because I am Llywelyn ap Gruffudd, the true Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru. Oh, I don't look very good there, do I? Ooh. But it's true. I lost my head over 700 years ago now. That's a very, very, very long time ago. And to be honest with you, I've been rather bored. You see, when I was the Tywysog, my life was full of fighting. Ha, ha, ha. Debating. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. Politics and speeches. And who, did I hear, is the Prince of Wales today? Yes, Prince Charles, the Queen's son. But he's English. So it's true. Everything that belongs to me and my family has been lost. I had heard that things had changed over 700 years. But let me tell you how it was 700 years ago. I'm going to start by showing you a very special tree, my family tree. Here it is. Now, back in my day, especially if you were a Tywysog, a prince, it was really important for you to know who your family was. But, yeah, my family was very, very complicated. Let's forget about this family tree because I have created a much simpler one. And here it is. This is me, Llywelyn ap Gruffudd. But if we follow the path back up towards Tide, my grandfather, Llywelyn the Great, Llywelyn Fawr. He had a dog called Gethin. Now, Tide was the Prince of Gwynedd, and a successful one at that. Even though his official title was Tywysog Gwynedd, he was really the Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru. He was quite a hero. Now, Tide had a lot of children, but the two most important for this story is Dafydd ap Llywelyn, Uncle Daf, and Gruffudd ap Llywelyn, Dad. Now, Uncle Daf was named to be the next in line, the heir to Tide's role as prince. And Dad wasn't happy with this. But then, Tide died. And so Uncle Daf was now the Tywysog Cymru. But life wasn't going to be easy for him. King Henry III, the King of England, he wasn't going to let Uncle Daf keep all the land and the power the Tide had worked so hard for. Uncle Daf had Gwynedd, Ceredigion and Powys. But King Henry fought against him and got his hands on Ceredigion and Powys. Uncle Daf only had Gwynedd left. But Uncle Daf had another problem. Dad. He thought he had his right to Gwynedd, and so they fought it out to see who would have Gwynedd. But Uncle Daf was the Tywysog Gwynedd and had more power than Dad. So in order for him to have some peace from King Henry, he caught Dad, gave him 2 Henry, and Henry took Dad all the way to the prison in the Tower of London. Then Dad tried to escape out the window in the Tower of London and fell to his death. Because Dad was dead, Uncle Daf started to fight back against Henry. This battle went on for about 2 years until Uncle Daf died suddenly. At this time, I was about 23 years old and at home with the family. I had been making sure that I had been a good friend to Uncle Daf. You see, Uncle Daf didn't have any children, and so he would need somebody to be a Tywysog, a prince, after him. Everything looked rather simple. I was to become the Prince of Gwynedd. But no, life as a prince is never simple. I had a few problems, and this guy was one of them. This is Owain Goch, my big brother. Now we needed to decide which one of us was to rule Gwynedd. In order for us to do this, we needed to sign a new treaty with King Henry III. The Treaty of Woodstock. Now this is an agreement between me, Owain Goch, my big brother, and the King of England, King Henry III, that states, in order for us to keep Gwynedd, Owain Goch and I must share it between us and with our younger brothers when they are old enough. But this doesn't make sense, does it? No, what Gwynedd needed was one strong leader. And that guy was me. But Owain didn't think so. And so we had to battle. The year 1255, the Battle of Bryn, Derwin. Owain wasn't strong enough, and I was victorious. Oh, I didn't kill Owain, of course not. No, he was my brother after all. I sent him to the prison in Castell Dolbadarn in Llanberis. I had some very good years after this. I was winning territory back from the king and winning the support of other lords. I finally had what I needed to give myself the big, grand title of the Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru. And in the year 1267, one of the most important things in our history happened. The Treaty of Trivalduin. This was a treaty between me and King Henry III. This is an official acknowledgement that I was the Tywysog Cymru. The King of England had accepted that there was now a Tywysog to protect Cymru. Of course, in order for me to get this, I had to agree to some harsh promises with Henry. But life was good after the Treaty of Trivalduin. And I was the Tywysog Cymru. But after a few years, things changed. Henry III died, and so his son, Edward I, became the King of England. Oh, I don't like this man very much. But I had a bigger problem. Dafydd Bach, my little brother. He also wanted to be the Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru. And so he plotted to have me killed. Yes, kill his brother. Well, luckily, this plan didn't work. But before I could catch him, he got away and had help from none other than King Edward I. This meant that the Treaty of Trivalduin was no longer valid. By this time, I was to marry Eleanor de Montfort. She and her family were in exile in France after all the fighting. She came on a ship from France to Wales to marry me. But her ship was hijacked by pirates. Pirates who had been paid by King Edward I as a part of his plan to send me back to Gwynedd. The tensions were high. I lost land and I was losing support. I lost Ceredigion and Powys once again. I only had Gwynedd left. After a year, we had to have another treaty. The Treaty of Abercrombie. This is a treaty between me and King Edward I. We had to agree on something for peace and for my Eleanor. I lost a lot of land, even a part of Gwynedd in the bargain. I got to keep the title Tywysog Cymru, but I felt like he did this just so he could make fun of me. Tywysog Cymru, with not very much of Cymru left. But this was a time for me and my men to have a rest from all of the fighting. We had a time of peace of some sort. But Eleanor and my people had suffered enough. I needed some time with Eleanor. And with Edward's permission, we were married. What was important now was for us to have a son, have an heir, so that the title of Tywysog Cymru could continue. We didn't have a son, but in the year 1282, we had a daughter, Gwenllian, the Princess of Wales. And she was perfect. Eleanor died after giving birth, and this broke my heart. But putting Gwenllian fixed it a little bit every time. These were hard times, but life was harder for the people of Cymru being ruled by Edward. My people had had enough. And who else do you think was angry amongst them? Dafydd Bach. He had tried to kill me, if you remember, because he wanted to be the Tywysog Cymru. He had been protected by Edward, but now he saw the bad in Edward and discovered that he didn't care at all about people of Cymru. Dafydd had tried to persuade me that we really needed to fight back. And I agreed. But we weren't ready. We weren't strong enough. Then I received a message to say that Dafydd Bach had attacked Castell Penarlag, where the English soldiers were living and resting. He had attacked against my word, and the battle had begun. I had no choice but to leave Gwenllian and go to protect Cymru. The battle had started down in Ceredigion and Powys. I decided to go there with an army of 7,000 men. We were ready to fight and win back Powys. In order for us to do this, we needed to gain the support of some important members in the area. But then, something happened. And even today, nobody knows truly what happened. And it's so long ago now, I start to wonder if I remember what happened. We were on Afon Irfon, protecting Pont Orewin, the bridge. There's no bridge there today, but it's not far from Builth Wells, you know, where the Royal Welsh Show is every year. It was December. The days were short. There was snow, and everybody was colder than usual. Then, one night, I received a secret letter. This was a letter from those important families in the area, wanting to discuss peace. This was a great sign. We had some of the men of the area already fighting with us. Gaining the support of this family would send a clear message to Edward to stop the fighting. I decided to go there to meet them with a few of my best men. We were doing this for peace. We had arrived at the woods where we had agreed to discuss peace. But it was quiet. Too quiet. Not a sound. Then, from afar, quiet but clear, screaming, angry, shouting, the sounds of brutal killing and fighting. The Englishmen had attacked the base where my men were resting. Nobody had come to discuss peace, and the whole thing was a trap. I shouted to some of my men, "You go back and protect the base." I shouted to the others, "Run, separate, hide if you can." I hid my prince's emblem deep into my clothes. The majority of the enemy didn't know what I looked like. Perhaps they wouldn't recognize me as the prince. I got onto my horse and I galloped away as quickly as I could. The rest of my men did the same. But it was too late. The enemy were right behind us within no time. I fought by killing one after the other, but there were too many. I had been caught. A sword came from behind into my back. I fell to my knees. Someone else struck me with a spear. I fell to the ground. The end had come. There's a place near Builth Wells called Cilmeri. And in Cilmeri, there's a large stone and a memorial to remember about me. To remember that Llywelyn ap Gruffudd, the Prince of Wales, was killed in the area. Edward I told his men to cut off my head and parade it through Wales to show everybody that the battle had been won. David Bach carried on to fight for a little while, but he was caught and hung, drawn and quartered. Edward then went to Gwynedd and conquered the place altogether. There was no one left to look after Cymru, apart from Gwynedd, my daughter, the Princess of Wales. She was the future of Wales. But Edward kidnapped her and sent her to Sempringham to live as a nun. Sempringham is all the way the other side of England, the furthest point away from Cymru. She lived there for most of her life, but she never knew who she truly was. That she was the Princess of Wales. She never knew who her father was. And I don't think she ever heard the Welsh language. Gwenllian's story is a sad one. And my story is brutal and bloody. And what is sad is that my family tree, Tywysog Cymru, comes to an end with Gwenllian. That's why the majority of history books will tell you that I am the last Prince of Wales. Llywelyn ein Llyw Olaf. That isn't true, is it? Oh no. We have brave princes and strong princesses to look after Cymru today. You, people of Wales, you are the future princes and princesses of Wales. I want you to protect your country. And remember, this story is a part of your history. The history of Wales, the history of politics, the history of fighting, and the history of your nation, the history of Wales.